Good morning. My name is Alex Parker. I am an enterprise architect with Salesforce.org. My team supports clients and solution engineers through the deeper technologies of the platform. So that's things like identity, integrations, app development, data architecture, things like that. Trying to avoid any sort of feedback. And in the enterprise landscape in particular. So today we're going to talk about Salesforce Connect and how we can easily pull in data from a third-party system into your environment. I'm sure you've seen this a bunch by now, our forward-looking statement slide. Please make sure any purchasing decisions are made based on currently available products. So at Salesforce, we love data. We love helping you visualize your data, helping you make your campus experience more engaging, ultimately your students more successful. I've seen some really great presentations around Einstein Prediction Builder, Marketing Cloud, right? All really exciting features and functionality, but it requires having access to that data, and oftentimes that's not in your environment. Historically, pulling in data from a third-party system was kind of a scary process. You might have to have developer talent, you might have to have maybe executive buy-in, things like that. But with Salesforce Connect, we're able to do that without writing any line of code at all. It's meant to be as accessible as possible via OData, which we'll talk about in a second, and pull that into the system and save you a lot of time and build out that functionality. All right, so before we get started, I want to give a quick primer on some of the types of objects we have in the system. Depending on your perspective, some of this may be new. We have our standard objects, right? This comes out of the box. Things like accounts, opportunities, contacts, have all of that robust functionality you're used to in the system. Then we have custom objects, which similarly, they have a similar level of functionality, but you're able to customize that based on your needs in the system. Things like milestones, really whatever you need. Saw a statistic recently that something like 80% of client data is in a custom object. So really highly leveraged, which is great, really makes the system your own. But today we're going to talk about external objects. So an external object is similar to a custom object. You design it based on your needs, but it pulls in the integration from that third-party service. It's a metadata object, so there's no true data there. We'll talk about that in a second. And you're able to pull that in and leverage that in your system. But all the existing functionality is there that you know and love. Again, some of that is read-write access, Apex development, Visualforce page layouts, unified search, mobile access, all of that's built into an external object. But what's most exciting is there is no data footprint in an external object, which is great from a performance perspective. You don't have to worry about heavy lifting of data between systems. That affects performance, it affects security. So from a data retention perspective, you're not keeping that in multiple systems. You're able to pull something in from, I know I use Workday as an example, maybe benefits information, maybe it's your SIS, you can pull that in as you need. It's real time, and you're able to access that on the fly. So behind the scenes, you are reaching out to that service, pulling it in whenever you load the page. It's in real time, it's in that runtime. Whenever you leave the page, it's cleared. Whenever you come back, it reaches out and pulls the latest data into the object again. So it's a huge advantage for external objects, which each of these in Salesforce Connect leverage. We'll be talking about 4 main methods for integration today. We're going to talk about end-to-end, point-to-point OData integrations via API. We're going to talk to one-to-many integration via OData as well, with middleware or maybe an ESB, something like that. We're going to talk about non-OData API integrations, also available via Apex. And then how to connect to another instance of Salesforce, which is not uncommon as well. There are 2 different ways, which we'll talk about. Connecting to OData via API. So this is a point-to-point connection you might build out directly to Workday or some other system, let's say. And you don't have to write any line of code at all. It's really exciting. It takes no time at all. I'll talk through the process in a moment. We support OData 2.0 and 4.0. If you aren't familiar, OData is a web-based protocol for updating and querying data in a third-party system. It was standardization efforts were led by OASIS, OData Technical Committee, but backed by big players like IBM, Microsoft, and SAP. So real enterprise scale solutions through that protocol. You may not have an enterprise environment necessarily, but what that should translate into is stability and access. This is an openly available protocol that you can pull in really easily. It doesn't take any time at all. And with that, we're able to reference third-party data, read that from a third-party system. We're able to integrate with it at a deeper level, at a table level, which is great. Build it into reports, build it into different parts of your workflow. And we're also able to use that as a platform for sending data back out of the system, which is also exciting. So you pull something in from a third party, you do your magic to it, you have read-write access, you can then make that OData endpoint accessible to a third-party system and give you an easy two-way sync of data. Again, with no line of code required. What external data sources do we support? Really any API endpoint that is OData 2.0 and 4.0 compliant. So that's a lot. There are a lot of options out there. Again, we mentioned SAP, Microsoft, and IBM. You see a lot of common solutions here. NetWeaver Gateway, IBM WebSphere, our own Heroku. If you have an archiving strategy with Heroku, or maybe you have a third-party app in development, something like that, you can very easily make OData endpoints accessible. If you have do-it-yourself data producers, they also commonly have OData compliant endpoints available. And then we'll talk through the middleware in a moment, but a number of these do as well. So that's end-to-end, that's one-to-one API endpoints through OData. But what if you have a one-to-many relationship you want to set up? What if in your environment you have multiple on-premise servers, which is common in the higher ed space, that you want to integrate together? You have maybe Jitterbit or something in place that you want to connect to. We work closely with a lot of partners to make sure OData endpoints are easily accessible there as well. And again, without any line of code, you make those accessible and you can integrate with that middleware and ESB. But what if your API isn't OData compliant? We try to work with OData because it's as easy as we need it to be, but sometimes you want a more granular level of control, more customization. We work with third-party APIs as well via our Apex adapter framework. This would require a little bit of development work on your side, but the Apex adapter converters are easy to write, they're not that complex, so they'd act as an adapter between Salesforce Connect and your third-party API. That's any HTTP API available through that connector. Functionally, this would look the same as that external object that I described. You have the external object, behind the scenes it reaches out, it loads in real time your information, you're able to sync, query, search, all of that with the Apex adapter behind the scenes. What if you want to connect to another instance of Salesforce? That's not uncommon as well. Depending on exactly how you've rolled this out over time, many organizations have multiple orgs, and you want to integrate those systems. We have two methods I'll describe today, both of which involve minimal integration lift from a development perspective. We have our cross-org connector, and then we have Salesforce to Salesforce. Salesforce to Salesforce is a syncing of data between systems. It's kind of an older method, but if you want to have a really deep level of control of your data in both systems, there are advantages to having that live in two systems and having that expanded footprint. But there are performance strategies you have to consider there as well. Cross-org connector, similar to some of the other solutions we talked about, is a way of doing it without expanding that footprint. It's a real-time sync of information between systems. You sync up objects, and you're able to, like an external object, pull that in as you need. So there are, again, different performance gains and different benefits there. You're able to read, write information between both systems, create list views, page layouts, templates. You can build chatter feeds based off of those synced objects. A lot of the functionality you know and love. You can build API on top of those synced objects, which is great. If you have multiple orgs and then you want to leverage that out through an API, you're able to really get complex in how you integrate with different systems. Visualforce can be laid on top of it as well, unified search, and it's all mobile ready, which is also great. So that was a quick overview, a very quick overview of a lot of the four methods that Salesforce Connect can pull systems together. But the idea is that for a lot of organizations that are newer to this, it can be kind of a scary task to undertake, to even begin that conversation. But again, a lot of this can be done without any line of code at all. When I was saying point and click through OData, truly it's 3 minutes. You go to your third-party system, you get your OData endpoint URL, you come back into Salesforce, you go to setup, external objects, load in your URL, you validate it, and that's it. So the bigger question is, how do you use this data? Not what sort of executive buy-in do I need, or what sort of resources do I need to actually build this out? So again, this is more exposure. If you want to follow up and have a deeper conversation, more than happy to do that. I'll be here for a few minutes after if you have any questions, but also you can engage your sales rep, and then they can pull my team in, and then we'll have a deeper conversation around pros and cons and how to approach it. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.